I'm Coach Kaza, training the complete athlete. We're partnering with the NAIA to offer mental health and support to coaches, student athletes, and to parents. Coaching is not what it was even just a few years ago. Now there's so many layers to the job, including mentoring our student athletes and monitoring their mental health. And most of us didn't get that education when we were preparing for this job. We want to be able to support you to also help guide you in identifying basic mental health issues and getting your student athletes to the best resources possible. We also want to support you in your careers because this has become quite a challenge. And we want you as great coaches to do just that. Stay great coaches. Now, the NAIA is one of the greatest things because it's overall holistic support of our student athletes, and that's why my heart has always been in the NAIA. But it also can take a grind on our coaching staff. So we want to teach you about boundaries and also taking care of yourself so you can have a long, successful career. So I really hope that you reach out and get the support you possibly could need along the way. You're welcome to Train the Complete Athlete. Coaches, I'm excited to address these two topics that have become key in the coaching world of our student athletes. One of them is accountability, and one is communication. Now, when I went to school, all I ever used to say is, yes, coach. I think I spent my whole freshman year just saying those two words. But nowadays, that really doesn't fly. And sometimes I wonder, where did we lose that along the way? So now with student athletes, they really want to know why we are doing things. And I know so many coaches take that as almost a personal offense. The reality is they want to know why so they can invest and do whatever you're asking them. Now, this is true not even in the athletic world. It's true in the academic world. It's true with my own children. They want to know the answer why. And so I stopped getting offended when my student athletes asked me those questions. I looked at it as an opportunity to guide them and teach them, hopefully to be coaches someday and better athletes now. And so when a student athlete would say, why are we doing this drill, or why do we do it this way? I was quick to respond and say, this is mechanically how this is going to make you improve. They want to know the buy-in of also how it's going to make you better. And lots of times they just are very short-sighted and they don't really see the long game of why you're teaching them what you're teaching them. So one of my best instances is about 2/3 of the way in my coaching career, one of the teams at our conference brought in on this home run hitter, and she was ridiculous. She was so amazing. And so us as a conference, we really tried to follow suit. We started bringing in these big hitters. Well, then the kiddo graduated and we all kind of changed our systems of offense. So for me, I kept saying to my team, we have to stop trying to live off the long ball. It's very up and down. We wanted to be able to produce runs more as a group. Now, my kids really struggle with that transition. And it wasn't necessarily selfishness. It was, I'll put the team on my back when I need to. And so one of the drills we developed along the way, to be honest, I called it Labyrinth. Why? I have no idea. We just needed a name. But we would divide my team into two teams, and they would have a certain amount of skills to be able to score as many runs as possible. So it could be two hits and a bunt and a slap. When they first did it, they got so frustrated because they tried to execute it and they're like, oh, there's no way we're going to score runs. And so I didn't say anything for like the first two times we played this game. And then I finally stopped and said, look, guys, if you use your outs or hit an opposite field fly ball or all these things together, you're going to be able to score more runs. So then it became pretty easy for them. They learned, hey, I'm going to use all these things. I'm going to score a run. And if we score one run in inning, it's going to be pretty hard to beat a team that can score 7 runs a game. So for them, the frustration came in not knowing, but when we were able to explain it, they really bought in and it changed our offense. And so our offense got to be much more of a group function, and we started scoring more runs. And it was definitely crucial in transitioning our style of offense and getting us even to a higher level on the national stage. Now, for me, I could have taken that as, hey, why are they challenging me what I'm saying? But I allow them to see, hey, this is going to be something that works, so we should execute it in games for us to be the most successful possible. Now, I've had to do that with things off the field as well. You know, I used to baby my team so much when I was a young coach. I think that I wanted everybody to like me. And then I got to the realization, I write a lineup. I'm going to piss somebody off every single day. And so I used to challenge my kids a lot more in playing in the rain or doing things that were much more difficult for them. So for me, I used to bring kids into the rain at a moment's notice. Then I realized that's ridiculous. We play in the Pacific Northwest and it's going to rain a lot. So I started making them pretty much be out in the rain. As we said, we have a rain scale. So anything above a 5, we're probably not going to be out practicing. Anything 5 and below, we're going to be on the field. And I explained to them there are going to be games that we need to be able to execute in the rain to win. And that actually came major into play our second trip to the World Series. We were playing in Oklahoma City for the NAIA to win the NAIA opening round. Now we were playing a team that had been to the World Series 21 seasons in a row. Now we were in the winner's bracket going into the championship series. And so we lost our first game and then it began to rain. And it was actually comical because our head coach comes up to me and goes, "Hey, do you play on turf much?" And I just chuckled and I go, "Once in a while." The reality is I played on turf almost every single day for the last 5 or 6 years of my career. My team knew all the ins and outs of playing on turf because it is definitely different. So transitioning fields over to the turf, I knew that all that playing in the rain, especially on turf, was going to come into play in this game. And it absolutely did. We won 5-2 and made our trip to the World Series. So I'm glad that I pushed my kids, but I also communicated why we were doing it. So instead of griping about being in the rain, they knew that this was going to pay off. And guess what? It did, right? And so me explaining things to them doesn't make me feel less of a coach. It makes me feel that they're more bought in. Now, I've even had a student athlete come to me and totally pretty much tear me up on something that I did at a game, my philosophy of something. Looked at her and I explained why I did what I did. And I said to her, "I don't agree with what you have to say, and I'm not going to follow what you are asking of me." Now, I don't usually make it a habit of letting athletes tear into me, and that usually doesn't happen. That was one of the few rare times. So there are times that I'm going to listen and I'm not going to agree. I'll explain, but I'll also explain why I'm telling them no. Because I don't want them to ever come back and say, "Well, you didn't even tell me." It's kind of one of those old sayings of, "I'm never going to tell my children, do so because I said so." I don't know if I've ever said that to my kids, because who's really going to jump on board for that? I know as coaches, if our AD said, "Do it because I said so," we would be in his office pretty dang quick. We want to know why we're doing what we're doing. And that's just as important with student athletes. So just remember, when you're explaining things, take the extra step. Remind them why we're doing it, how it's going to get them to be a better performer, and how that's all going to come into play for the best end result. It also is important with those life lessons. Lots of times I say, "Hey, do you want to be dealing with this now in a safe environment or when you're out in the real world?" One of my student athletes was doing an internship at Universal Studios. She's actually an engineer for Universal Studios now at the ripe age of 22. She's pretty outstanding. But she was struggling going and talking to coach at that point in time. And I said to her, "Hey, kiddo, would you rather try and have this conversation now with your coach that's relatively safe, or would you rather have it with the CEO of Universal when you go over budget on your project?" She laughed and said, "Oh, I'd rather talk to coach." And the next morning, I had a text message saying, "Hey, I talked to coach. Things went really well." So we want our kids to understand why we're even pushing them to do things in their social world or go through constructive conflict with their teammates or even us. We want them prepared to go into the next phase of life instead of just being a ball player. I think that's one of the best gifts of the NAI is we get to be able to do both. And so we want to be able to serve our student athletes in the full capacity instead of just one little thing. So jump in, communicate, tell them what's going on. That way they're going to buy in and they're going to make your program and their future even better. That's going to be the key to changing this generation back onto the competitive arena. One of the great components of holistic coaching. We get to help our student athletes grow in every single arena instead of just being a great performer. And that's really why most of us got into coaching. So be sure when you're explaining things, take the extra step. And remember, you're going to teach them to be a better performer and be able to go and take on the challenges in the real world. And that's really what we're here for. So another important topic with our student athletes is accountability. And I think this has gone to the wayside even more than anything else. The reason accountability has kind of gone out the door because we're just waiting for a kid or a coach to be talking to our athletic director or to our president, and when we didn't even know there was an issue. And so when I talk about accountability, I usually start when I talk about team rules or cultural expectations. I'm not much of a goal person because I always think that we have to have the right culture to meet expectations. Goals are outcome. Culture is every day and how we do everything. And it's what we really have control over. So I know for me, when I first started coaching, my roles were about this long. And a lot of things happened along the way. I started working for an amazing guy, and he had a background in law. He was our associate athletic director, and he always told me, get everything in writing. Now, by the time I left coaching, my rule book was probably excessive, and he actually gave me a hard time about being a little bit over the top. And I always joked with him. I said, "Hey, it's just in writing." Now, the reason I wanted things to be in writing, because I always wanted to say to my student athletes, "There's expectations right here, and you didn't own up to it." Now, I had a student athlete that actually tested positive on a drug test. It was during the fall, and the rule was you were suspended for a week. She actually challenged me about her penalty during practice games. I could easily say it's all here in writing, and I am going to hold you to that expectation. That's the thing is jobs, spouses, friends are also going to hold us to that. So we need to be able to educate our kids along the way that this is part of real life. Now, you're always going to run risk of having a parent try to jump over your head or a student athlete jump over your head. Now, the reality is that means that they're afraid to go through you. And a lot of kids are afraid to talk to their coach. When I say go talk to coach, the fear in their eyes is real. But you can help control in that environment. You want to have an open door policy. Now, I know a lot of us say we have them, but it really doesn't play out that way. My office was almost so open door, I never got anything done. And to be honest, that's how I became a counselor. They just kept coming and sitting on my couch. I also want to be transparent to their parents. So I send the rule books to their parents. My thought is they're 18 and they're adults and they should be held accountable. But parents still think they have an influence in the college game these days. I also am very clear about playing time because that's probably the number one culprit in unhappiness in college athletics is playing time. So I'm very clear about, hey, playing time is not something that's owed. Everybody that comes here was all state, all conference, all everything, right? And so when they get here, you have to be the best of the best. Now, that does not mean that you can't fill a role if you are not a starter. So many of my best athletes, maybe not athletes, best teammates that have great talent, but their self-sacrifice changed who we are. And so we want to show them that this is their role, this is how they contribute. And then we want to also recognize that for them because lots of times they think my value is nothing if I'm not a starter. Now, I had a student athlete come to me one day. She popped to my desk. I had never met her in my life. She goes, I want to come and throw batting practice for you. I just kind of shook my head and I go, what? I said, do you need a scholarship? She goes, no. I said, do you want to travel? No. I said, then what are you doing here? She goes, I really just like pitching and I want to be able to help you. Awesome. I said, tell me you throw off speed, which she did. So she came 3 days a week, no complaints. I tried to get her eligible to be in a game and she didn't want to. But her sacrifice of pitching to our kids 3 days a week was a game changer. And I told her that all the time. I knew by her pitching to us, that was going to be one of the things that got us to the World Series. We couldn't hit off speed to save our life, and we didn't have an off speed pitcher. So her coming was definitely one of the biggest indicators of us taking the next step on the national stage. I never will forget that kid because she was truly selfless, right? And we also explained that to her. Hey, these are the roles that you play. This is how you contribute. And that's really important. We also want to hold our kids accountable with the hard and fast rules. One of my biggest regrets as a coach is I had a student athlete and she was one of my better players. And she had ditched class. And one of our rules is if you're ditching class, then you don't play. And I let her play and gave her a different punishment. That actually caused some division with one of my assistant coaches that I respect so much. And I wish she would have said to me at that moment, do not be doing that. Because she was right. I did not answer to my own rules of accountability. And I truly regret that. If it's going to cost me my job by having integrity, I'll lose my job. In some ways, it did cost me my job at one point. I wanted to do what was right. And sometimes bosses want to do what brings in money. So that's the thing is sometimes we have to decide, as in the great wise Harry Potter movie, when Dumbledore says, sometimes we have to choose between what is right and what is easy. And that is where accountability lies. And I know for me, I always want to be able to look my student athletes and my assistant coaches and say, I'm choosing the right thing. Integrity comes first. And set these guidelines, and now I'm going to hold people to them. Because what are we telling our student athletes if we don't hold them accountable? That they're never going to have big consequences for anything they do. And think about how that's going to impact them in the future. Even though we're coaches and not parents, we do really fill the role as a third coach. And it's our job to be able to hold them accountable. So as they transition to the world, they will know that rules are there for a reason. And it's their responsibility to follow them and make sure that they are honoring the people that set them.